So to start with, just a bit of an introduction about me. My name is Mohamed Hassan. I have been pen tester for 4 years, developer before that for about 3 years. And in my current role as a pen tester, I also help a lot of developers and teams to try to integrate security from the beginning and not just wait until the end, until we come later and do pen testing for them. And I'm currently a security consultant with Aura Information Security. And yes, my hair is real, and no, you cannot touch it. So let's get this out of the way at the beginning. So yeah, and you can find me in Twitter. I have shorter hair in Twitter, but I can update the picture if that's important. Now, why should you even care when it comes to integrating security from the beginning? Why, like the way most of the teams do it nowadays is just they basically build the software, and then before the build or before they go live, hopefully, they will do a pen testing. I think there are 3 main points when it comes to that that are important to think about if you're going to do security from the beginning, right? The first is the cost of remediation. Based on IPM research, okay. Based on IBM research, it costs 6 times more expensive to fix a vulnerability in the implementation and 15 times more expensive to fix it in testing. And we all know this slides. The more you wait, the more the cost is going to go up. So the goal is basically to try and slide the bug there, to make it slide through the curve to discover it as early as possible. And this way you'll be able to fix it from the beginning or as soon as possible. The other important issue as well is the cost of discovery. So in the US, one attack on average costs around 1.3 million based on a research done in 2017, and in the same year in New Zealand, it costed the economy 250 to 400 million cyber attacks. And when it comes to small businesses, there are some small businesses who actually got really hurted from cyber attacks. So it's not just big businesses. There is a company called RetinaX, which is quite creepy. The company basically gives you like a mobile app or an application that you can install in your kid's mobile phone or in your kid's computer or your loved one's computer as well, and you can spy on them, really. So the hackers, some hacker activists didn't like that. I don't know why, but yeah, they didn't. So they hacked the website, and until today, if you went to the website, they will issue like we actually got like some of our softwares got hacked. That's why we stopped it. The hacker says they were able to access like some pictures to the kids and other stuff like that, but thank God they didn't actually, based on my information, they didn't leak the data. The other thing which is really interesting, it's not even secure. Like, can you at least use that? Like, yeah. They definitely did not learn anything. There are also code spaces. Code spaces totally shut down. I think they have been operated for 1 year. It wasn't a startup that allowed developers to basically, it's like kind of a GitHub. And the hackers hacked them and just deleted everything. So the company just shut down because they couldn't retrieve any data backups. Penetration testing. The thing about penetration testing, and that's coming from a pen tester, there are like 3 main things that you might think about when you consider pen testing. Pen testing is absolutely important, but some of the limitations are time, because the pen testing is limited in time. You cannot bring a pen tester, make him pen test for the whole year. The other thing is the scope. So usually pen testing are limited in scope, so they're not going to test every single function and everything, single thing in your application. And the other thing also, a lot of the back-end development code might not even get hit at all by the pen tester for various reasons. So from my perspective, the best person who can secure your application is you. Like pen testing is really, really important, but yeah. The other thing is also agile. Most of the teams now follow agile process, which means if the pen test happened today, 2 weeks from now, the code is different. So sometimes that will redeem the pen testing report irrelevant. The other thing is, I want to emphasize again, it's very, very important to do pen testing, but I think it's just never enough. I don't know if you guys know this, but that's one of my favorite songs. Okay, so when it comes to the maturity model, so why SAMM? Imagine this is the maturity model. On the left here, that's as bad as it can get, and on the right, this is like most secure ever, which is not doesn't exist. But so SAMM, the model SAMM, which is the security maturity model from OWASP, help you to answer where you are right now. So, sorry. Software assurance maturity model, yeah. So so SAMM will help you answer where you are right now. It will also, and you do that by something called gap assessment. We do it at Aura. It's a fancy name for something. You really just use the Excel sheet provided by SAMM, and you answer questions, a lot of questions, by the way. They will ask a lot of questions where you are right now, and then this way you will know where you are in the maturity model. The other thing also it helps you know is where you want to be, right? So like a year from now or 2 years from now, what maturity do you want to be? So it helps you also decide the goal and also help you to know how to move from point A to point B. The other thing also, you might think it's a straight line, but it's more often something like that. Some tasks will take more time than you expected. Some activities will take more effort than expected. So bear in mind and allow enough time, and it's better to have more time than less time. So what is SAMM? I have been talking about SAMM and I haven't introduced it yet. So SAMM basically is a software assurance security model. It has 4 pillars, which they call a business something. I think, yeah. Anyway, so like four sections, let's call them. The first is governance, construction, and verification, and then finally operation. And in each of these 4, there are multiple activities, security activities. So in total, there are 12 security activities you can basically tackle to be more secure alongside the whole process. Now, this is based on SAMM 1.5. There is a new SAMM 2.0 coming out, and it's now beta, and it's open for comment. And I think Joan is going to be talking about it later today, the difference between 1.5 and 2.0, but I'm here depending on 2.0, I mean 1.5. So let's take like an activity, for example. Let's assume we're going to take now security requirements. So in each of these activities, you will see SAMM nicely introduce like 3 maturity models and 3 maturity layers of the same activity. So in the security requirements, you might be in the first or the second or the third or in between. And in each of these maturity, there's an objective that you have to achieve. And there's also kind of activities you have to do in each of these objectives. So when it comes to maturity levels, how do you know what is the difference between the levels? The first, usually maturity level means you have initial understanding and ad hoc kind of approach. The second maturity level, you kind of have increased the efficiency of of the approach and the effectiveness. The third one, you have a comprehensive mastery of the whole, and you have a practice and scale. Another way also I like to look at it at the maturities. The first one is ad hoc and relative, or reactive. The second is there is some plan and structure. The third, you have a way to make it mandatory, measured, and enforced. Now, I'm not going to be talking more about the maturity model. It's quite straightforward. You can go and check it out. But I will talk about basically 5 things, or 5 pillars I think are very important to think about when you introduce this to your team. I think if you focus on these 5 things or 6 things, you are definitely gonna get good results in the long term. So the first one is measuring success. So some common ways people, when you introduce the idea to the management, they want to see, for example, after a year, there have been some improvement because you're asking for budget, you're asking for resources, so they want to see some improvements. Some common ways to do that are basically the number of vulnerabilities discovered. So after like implementing SAMM, let's assume, after 1 year, you can check out the difference between the vulnerabilities at the beginning of the year and the end of the year. And this way you will demonstrate impact. The other thing is also tool usage. So how many of the developers are actually using the tools, the security tools that you introduced? The third thing is the maturity itself, right? So if you started with the maturity 0 or maturity 1 and now you're maturity 1.0 or 1.5 or 2, that's also like an enhancement. But important things to notice is first, make sure you have really good visibility, meaning tell everybody about what you're doing and tell everybody about the enhancement you have done, the profits you have made. Make like a kind of a propaganda inside the organization about the security. Make sure everybody knows how good we're becoming every single day, how good we're becoming in every project. So it becomes this kind of thing that everybody's talking about. The other thing is also security training for the management. A lot of the people start by security training for the developers and forget the management. I think it's very important to at least do some awareness for the management to understand how serious vulnerabilities can be. If the vulnerability was discovered, what happens? And it doesn't have to be technical or anything, just awareness of how serious the issue can be. The other thing is also the feedback. Always get feedback from the developers, from the management, from everyone involved, from the stakeholders, and always update the maturity model based on that and update your activities. The second point is the security champions. So security champions are it's a team of preferably from each, like the internal team, you choose 1 or 2 depending on how big the teams are. And the reason you need them is basically you will spread the knowledge through them. So they are people who are actually interested about security. They know more than the others about security. If you want to, for example, spread something new or spread a good practice or make it cool, you spread it through the security champions. The other thing also, they help you to get feedback because a lot of people don't like to, for example, you cannot just send all day long some spreadsheets and asking people to fill how good they are the new tool. But if you have security champion can actually know what their teammates talking about, if they like the tool or not, and this way they will be able to get you the feedback. The other thing is also trying the new tools. So if you have a new tool or a new tool you want to try out, you can give it to them first to try it, and then give you back a feedback and even implement it like on a wider scale. The other thing also I find companies find difficulties in is how to identify a good security champion. The first is the knowledge. So anybody who knows more than the average developer about security, that's a good pick. The other thing is also they want to learn. So it's not enough to have enough knowledge, but also they are excited to learn. That's good also to have. The other thing is also they want to be involved because sometimes they do know a lot, but they just don't want to have anything to do with it. So that's important as well, that they want to be involved. So how to facilitate it, because it's not okay to just choose the champions and ask them to do things and just not help them. I think it's very important that they get help from the management as well. So the 20% rule allow at least 20% of their time to be allocated to security-related activities. And this way they will have more time to actually do the activity they need to do. The other thing is also encourage sharing. So if they learned a new thing, a new cool tool, encourage them to share it between their teams, maybe even have like a kind of a monthly workshop where they talk about what they have been working on and everybody attend. So encourage sharing because it's so important. The other thing is also training and trying new things. So if there is like a new tool or something, give them training that, give them some advanced training on some advanced issues that you're dealing with. If a pen test report came with for example, difficult vulnerability to fix, get one of the champions to go on a training, and when they come back, they teach everybody else. So using the champions this way, it's going to be more effective on the long run. The other thing is also the training that I think it's very important to implement early on. So when it comes to training, starting with awareness and training is very important because at the beginning, maybe the developers have some, like they don't even understand why you're trying to make them do all of these new things. Like, what's the point? So if you start from the training, the developers will have the knowledge and the understanding why they need to care about security. The other thing is also encourage the champions to give some training. And as I said, if the champions have some new knowledge, it's really good to share. So this way you don't have to actually stop everybody from learning and everybody goes to a training and then come back. Maybe this is okay. The other thing is also generic training is good, but to start with. So when it comes to the maturity, if you're a maturity 0, a good way to start is to give everybody a training about basic security. So OWASP 10 is a good way to start. But after that, you need to give like specific training for each team. So if a team is, for example, using Java or using C# or Node.js, you can like choose like a specific training for that and give them a training more specified. The other thing is also use the pen testing reports. So once like if you're giving a training internally or even by an agency, maybe give them some of your reports that you have been fixing already so that they know what kind of vulnerabilities you often find in your team, and this way you will teach the team about the vulnerabilities that have been identified before. Also, don't forget the new hires. So make it as part of the new hire of the company. If there is a new hire, he or she has to go through training process before actually starting with the team. The other thing is also connected to the career progression. So connect it with the KPI, make it part of the KPIs so that they don't, like before they become a senior or something, they have to follow or like get some certifications. That will also help. The other thing is also very important is closed loop system, which means ask like every time you find a vulnerability or when I say you find vulnerability in the pen testing, so you brought a pen testing and you got a report, every vulnerability ask these 3 questions. The first, how can you prevent this vulnerability? The second is how you can detect it, and also how you can mitigate it. So it's not enough to just go ahead and fix the vulnerability one time. You have to ask these questions to prevent it from happening again. So let's assume you found an SQL injection in one of your applications. So how you can prevent it? You can, for example, teach the developers how not to introduce this, like what's the meaning of SQL injection. You can maybe have like some code practices that allow, for example, or disallow usage of like direct SQL queries. Also how to detect it. You can maybe, for example, install a WAF in front of the application. Maybe have some logs that go through the logs and understand if there is someone trying to hack and block them. And the third one is how to mitigate it. So you can, for example, think about batching it from the beginning or just putting a WAF in front of it so it doesn't happen again. The other thing is also reusability. So it's very important not to reinvent the wheel and allow the teams to really share between each other. So some of these ideas are secure code repository. So instead of going to, like for example, Stack Overflow or some like online forms to get the code from that not really secure, you can have your own secure code repository that has been like verified before by the security team that the developers can use the code from there. The other thing is also technical standards for developers. So have your own technical standards in-house so that the new hires and even the existing ones can follow the technical standards in that. And some ideas, for example, to have a list of verified open source and frameworks that can be used, and a list of verified open source tools, and also verified software. And this way, you will make sure that you don't introduce any like weak or vulnerable softwares or vulnerable piece of code inside the program. And also be flexible, because if you, for example, have one security developer or one security engineer, and he has to follow, like he has to review every single request from the developers to use a new tool, that will like be like a backlog. So make it flexible enough that the developers can try a new tool before you actually look at it, but don't go so far. Like try to catch up with the developers as soon as possible. The other thing is also have an internal security forums where people can ask questions. The security teams can integrate, can talk to them and answer these questions. And for the security teams, try to spend as much time as possible on the security forums and answering questions from the developers, because that will help, especially at the beginning. They will have a lot of questions. The other thing is also introduce office hours. So for the security teams, introduce office hours in the beginning, for example, the beginning of the week or the end of the week, depending on how the agile works, the agile environment works in your environment and your organization. I will also discuss some really cool tools. I think it will help you to kick it off, kick the OWASP SAMM off, and help you also not to use not to build everything from the beginning. So the OWASP maturity models, you can use this instead of the Excel sheets. So most of the teams I have seen, they use Excel sheets to, for example, to do the security model, gap assessment and things like that. OWASP maturity models are a really good tool for that. They help you to build this maturity model assessment and help you to answer the questions, and you can scale as well. The other thing is OWASP ZAP. So you can use OWASP ZAP to scan the applications, the web applications you have automatically. So you don't, like you can even integrate it as part of the build. So for example, once you, before the build, the OWASP ZAP can be triggered off and vulnerability scan will run. And it's all open source and free tools, so you can try with it. The other thing is also OWASP dependencies check. So if you're using a lot of libraries inside your program, you can use OWASP dependency check to check for vulnerabilities in these libraries you're using. OWASP Security Shepherd and OWASP Juice Shop and then vulnerability application can be used as the training tools to train the developers about some of the main and common web attacks. So for example, Juice Shop has a lot of vulnerabilities in them, so you can teach the developers what is SQL injection is and what's the problem and how it can affect their application. The other thing is OWASP Defect Dojo. So if you don't have an internal way to track vulnerabilities, you can use the Defect Dojo. You can track vulnerabilities across the whole, different projects, and it can collaborate multiple teams together. So it's a really cool way to track the vulnerabilities. The other thing is OWASP Security Knowledge Framework. It has some really cool checklists before each agile process. So each 2 weeks you can use the checklist to make sure you're not forgetting anything. It has also knowledge base, so some really cool information like about XSS injection. If the developers doesn't know what's an XXE injection that the pen tester report is telling them about, he can come here and check it out. The other thing is also it has code examples. So I think it supports about five languages, but it has some secure code examples you can use to know how to do the things the right way. The other thing is also OWASP dependency track. The cool thing about this tool, it tracks in real time and keeps, if there is a vulnerability discovered in any of the components you're using, it will give you a notification so you can mitigate it right away and not just wait until a problem happens. OWASP cornucopia, this can be used in doing threat modeling. I think there was a talk before here about threat modeling. This is also like a really cool tool to use, and it makes it like a gamifiable kind of game to do threat modeling. Also, there is a SANS DevOps toolchain and SWOT checklist. That's from SAN, and it's free online. You can download it. It has some really cool tool that you can use in each of the step of the process of the build. Yeah. And yeah, finally, thanks very much. If you have any questions, you can shout it at me, or after the talk, you can talk. You can also reach me in here. And finally, I didn't actually design all of these images myself. I took them from these people, so thanks to them. And thanks to you guys for listening. And if you have any questions, please. Otherwise, thank you.